Hey everyone, so here's another article I found interesting, the truth about Ripple. I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to do these, but I guess I'll work with it as I go, and if it works, let me know. If not, let me know. Basically, I cut and pasted the article into a Word document so I can highlight things and refer to them as needed. So here we go. This was written by a gentleman, Cryptoyoda, on the 4th of January, the beginning of this year. He goes into the expense one has when making a profit, and in this case particularly in Ripple. And I'm assuming he's referring to moral or greed kind of expenses. I'll try and go into that a little bit later. So basically, he says he put in a lot of research into Ripple, and judging off of what he's found, he's very interested in kind of throwing up the red flags and making sure everyone else that may or may not be interested in it or who has invested in it to get out now while you can. And he goes over the reasons as to why he believes that. So I'm sort of assuming that he's done enough research to form an opinion, but as I read through the article, not enough research, but hey, no one's perfect. So for me, full disclosure, the portfolios I have are, at least one of them is 60% in XRP, so I'm kind of biased, I guess you could say. However, I do find that individuals who have purchased XRP actually have a better understanding of it because they have some skin in the game. True, if you don't like what you read and you go and research Ripple and it scares the crap out of you, you don't invest in it. That's perfectly fine. That's your call. But I do see a common thread, and I don't know if it's only particular to XRP and Ripple, but I mean, I'm a big proponent of Bitcoin myself. That was what I first started with, as everyone else did. And I only point these things out because after researching Ripple to the nth degree and then investing in it, these articles that I read describing XRP, Ripple, and either the problems or the benefits of it have countless holes in them. So I'm trying to figure out, do I have a biased opinion, or is my opinion more valuable excuse me, because I've got money in it? And if I am wrong, I lose money. If this guy is wrong, as he said, he's just looking to spread the truth. So, for whatever that's worth, I'm in it. Let's just put it that way. So he feels it's his responsibility to speak up when misinformation rises parabolically, which I find interesting because he does a little bit of misinformation himself, but again, no one's perfect. This part, hold on, I have these notes and I have more notes. Pardon for the dead air. So, let's read the article. So he's fine with people either researching or not researching whatever it is. That's their deal. And if we disagree, I'd hate for him to think of my opinion as a, quote, fanboy, But like I said, I have a lot in it, so I'm really eager, and this second I found this article, I consume everything. I hope that comes through in my describing or in my covering articles such as this. I want to get to the bottom of any problem or any unforeseen snafu in Ripple or XRP, because if I agree with it and it makes sense, sure, it comes out of my wallet off to the exchange and I'll sell it as quickly as I can. But I haven't found that yet. I'm still looking, I'm always looking, but I haven't found it yet. So I hope this isn't a fanboy perspective. This is just my interest in finding the answer in case I was wrong. So he goes on to talk about the early adopters of Bitcoin and why they invested in it in the first place. This, I get it, I understand it, but it kind of rubs me the wrong way. The same way, I think it was Kenn Bosak in a interview with Andy Hoffman, kind of made some, not allegations, but laid out reasons as to why people should or shouldn't, or basically why people do things with Bitcoin. And it's not that they're a know-it-all and I'm trying to call them out on it. It's just a hubris, might be the wrong word. Basically just they come off as knowing exactly what's going on, here's why, and that's that. Now hopefully viewers and listeners hearing that will take it with a ginormous grain of salt and just chalk it up to their excitement about owning Bitcoin. But I'm imagining some people listen to it and say, oh, so this is why everyone's buying Bitcoin. Anyway, that's sort of a tangent. Yeah, so it just bugs me when people say, this is why people are buying Bitcoin, or this is why someone is doing something. No one asked me why I did it, so I'm not sure how they're forming their opinion. This reasoning that he points out is flat out incorrect, which I guess I'll preface these reasonings with just being incorrect. Some of the reasons why he gave, or some of the reasons why people invested in Bitcoin early, global revolution that blockchain could potentially bring to the world. Sure, yes, that is a reason, valid reason. But the redistribution of global wealth, no. That's flat out wrong. In order to redistribute something, you have to collect it. And I guess in Bitcoin's case, no one has collected money in order to redistribute it. The money that the early investors are acquiring is the value that has been put into Bitcoin, if that makes any sense. They're not redistributing value that already existed. I guess they're redistributing the money, technically, but the value that Bitcoin created is new. So the whole redistribute thing is not correct. I think he may mention it a few other times in this article. And another reason I think a lot of people talk about Bitcoin or say, hey, it's a great idea, is in order for everyone to be their own bank. Which, yes, I agree that's an outstanding reason and totally doable with Bitcoin. However, when I talk to my mom about it, she can't wait till I stop talking. It's not for her. She doesn't care. It's like her car. If she gets in, turns it on, and presses the gas, presses the brake, if everything works, That's all she cares about. So I think there's quite a few people that don't want to be their own bank and are perfectly fine with the bank being their bank. Now I see XRP, Ripple, and a few other tokens, currencies. I'm not sure how I should, what adjective I should, or adjective noun, I don't know, what label I should give them, but I see them as being kind of the intermediary between the crypto world and the financial world. It's got its foot in both sides. It's a little crypto and it's a little regulatory, and I can see that as being or people segue into crypto, whether they use it directly or not, somehow or other, their finances will be tied up in a good way, in crypto technology or blockchain technology. This statement is what caught my attention when I was skimming through it. The debt-based fiat. I come to Bitcoin from a, I guess, monetary nerd point of view. So this phrase, debt-based fiat currency, is basically the reason why I got into Bitcoin. Yes, there's, good things to be said for being their own bank and distributed, immutable, decentralized. Those things are all great. But in my mind, or the metric I use is, does it bring on debt? In order to make Bitcoin, is there debt involved? Because if there is, then there's an interest payment. So when new fiat currency is brought into circulation, it is borrowed. And when anyone borrows anything, obviously they want it back, but they also want back some interest to pay for that money that was borrowed. So the creation of our money that's circulating was borrowed into existence, therefore it needs to be paid back with interest. The problem with this kind of system is the money to pay back the principal, the interest, that interest was never created in the first place. So mathematically there isn't enough money in the world to pay off everyone's debts. There's just enough to cover the principal. The interest portion isn't available because that money was never introduced into the economy. So that's kind of for me, that's the holy grail. If something is used as a medium of exchange, a unit of account, if it's fungible, if it's everything else, that's kind of a scale of what makes a money good or what makes it bad. This is hard to describe. For me, it's the debt part. Is there interest incurred or not? If there isn't, it's good. Use it. Is it fungible? Is it portable? All those things are kind of how good of a money can it be. And if it checks off those boxes, then it's a better money than something else. But if it's debt-based, get it out of my face. It can't even sign up for the class. Don't show up. So I thought he was going to use this information, the debt-based portion, and tie it into the rest of the article. Not so much. He does point out that this kind of fiat currency, and that's what it's normally referred to as, can be printed at will, which, yes, that is correct, and that does lead to inflation. However, I would also like to add that it's a unsustainable method of creating money because of the interest that has to be paid back. Not very many people mention that, probably because they aren't aware of it. I think it took me a couple years and maybe less than 100 books to figure out kind of what it was all about. And now I only read, not only read, but the 3 or 4 books that I have read that led me to that discovery, I would only say read those 3 or 4 books and see if you can understand it. Don't waste your time on all the other ones because they don't really help. So moving on. Let's see, not supposed to understand. This I do agree with him. Excuse me. He basically paints the picture of we're not supposed to understand it properly in the first place, i.e. money and the economy and how things work, because if we did, there'd be hell to pay, which I totally agree with him. If we were taught what money was and how to use it in elementary school, our system would be very different than it is today. So that I agree with him 100%. And here we go into XRP. So for this article / video, I'm going to try and not touch on, I guess, the common buzzwords or the common disagreeing points that most people have. You know, whether XRP and Ripple are tokens or not crypto, or, well, it's not decentralized, but their goal is to make it decentralized. I'm going to try and stay away from that. There is another guy on YouTube, Dre Ventures. He's much better at, basically the videos he makes just involve the facts about Ripple and XRP. And he just lays it out and says, hey, this is what people say. This is Ripple's plan. This is what they're trying to do. And this is how they're doing it. So take it for what it's worth. So he'd be a good resource to go and learn why Ripple or why XRP is decentralized and all that good stuff. So cryptoyoda, now we're doing a different he. He goes into what's backing XRP. And I find it interesting, or at least I'd want to clarify, for me, what backs XRP is basically a company that has every incentive to create more value behind XRP and to increase its adoption for its target market. So when he explains that XRP tokens are essentially backed by traditional fiat currencies, I'm going to have to say, no, you're wrong. They're backed by the company's, I don't want to say faith because that's too close to fiats. It's backed by the company's interest in promoting their token to their customer, and the fact that their customer is able to save a considerable amount of money in using it for its functional utility. I think this part he may have mixed up a few things. XRP is not intended to be money in the first place, which is correct. It's a global settlement vehicle. So it's not intended to be money. It's a medium of exchange to transact value. I think this is where he may have mixed it up. That technically is money. Not intended to be money. Hold on, maybe I read it wrong the first time. XRP is not intended to be money in the first place. So I think he's referring to money is a medium of exchange to transact value. I apologize, I think I read that incorrectly. However, it can be seen as a gift card or token that can be sent in seconds to redeem for fiat money. So, I'm not sure if he's saying XRP is not intended to be money in the first place. So then is this next statement what it is intended to be? A medium of exchange to transact value. But that is that's part of the definition of money. So I'm sort of confused. I would say XRP is redeemable in fiat by design. If a bank purchases a certain amount of XRP, sends it to another bank, and then it's sold for whatever fiat they're trying to transfer, that all happens in the 3 to 4 second transaction time. So on one end they're sending dollars, and on the other end they're receiving dollars, or they're sending yen and receiving yen. So I'd say XRP is more of a intermediary or a bridge asset and not money in the first place. I don't know, that's not entirely sure what he means, but I think I know. I don't know. Here's that word again, redistribute. So everyone harps on XRP's creation of 100 billion tokens out of thin air, which to me, with my put my glasses of is it debt-free currency or not, creating something out of thin air is perfectly fine, as long as you've got value behind it. That's the key. If there's value behind it, you can create whatever you want, and you can call it whatever you want. You can create as many of them as you want, as long as there is value behind it. And in this case, what Ripple Labs, or what they're doing, is putting value behind the token they created. So this whole redistribute thing is no. And yeah, XRP, 60% of it, of the supply, is controlled by Ripple in escrow. So it's controlled by them, which kind of makes sense because they made it in the first place, and they are what will give it value. Not they, but their activity and their job is to give XRP value. So yeah, they're going to have a lot of it. It serves their best interest to let their XRP out into the ecosystem in the right amount when enough value can accompany it, if that makes sense. And this, whenever I read about cashing out on value, this smacks of, 14-year-old crypto investor thinking, oh, if I had this, I'd sell it and be a billionaire. No. This whole cashing in on the value is an idea, but if Ripple were to do that, they'd essentially be shooting themselves in the foot, in the face, in the head, dismemberment. They might as well just stop going to work and say, oh, this was all just for fun. Because that's what would happen to the price. It would plummet. Everything, basically the whole concept of out of thin air, back into thin air, it would disappear. Once the value's gone, the token is pointless. So so Ripple Labs has every incentive to uphold the XRP token by way of more value. So the more value they give it, the more value people see that it has. And he points out this tweet, I guess we're in German, maybe. Folgen. So the day Ripple was switched on, 100 billion XRP created out of thin air. Yes, totally fine, as long as there's no interest attached. 60 billion are still held in escrow, and that isn't included in the market cap. True, because it's not in circulation, which there's a lot in circulation, more than some other coins, but it's not the total amount. And this is another thing that I find most people writing articles on XRP, or most people that haven't researched it to the extent that I have and some other people, there's no mention of the discrepancy between 100 billion and total supply. And why is the total supply under 100 billion? Well, some coins are burnt, or some tokens are burnt in transactions. Simple fact, simple thing to look up, simple to understand. Why they don't mention it, I don't know, but that's just one thing I've seen come up over and over again, is there's no mention of this coin burning. It's not a huge added benefit, but it does cause a question of why is this less than 100 billion? And I think as investors, we should question everything. Try and figure out why is this? What's the answer to that? So this manipulation of the market when they control 60% just goes along with the 14-year-old. If I had 60% of a coin, I'd go sell it on the exchanges and make millions of dollars. Totally flat out no. Uncertain goals, no. There are certain goals. It's to give XRP as much value as possible. That's their goal. So to say we don't know what those individuals do with this high valuation, we do know. It's the same thing. The guy that owns Amazon, what's his name? Bezos? Basically, it's the same thing that he does with all of his Amazon stock. Once it reaches $1,000, does he just sell everything and say, haha, I'm rich? No, because that would drop the price of the stock. So this whole manipulation and making easy money is from the perspective of a 14-year-old. I'm not saying this guy's 14, I'm just saying that mindset is where this red flag comes from. And again, the pre-mined, created out of thin air. As long as there's no debt, you do whatever the heck you want. Add value to it. If you can't, well, then no one's going to want it. Everyone says, oh, well, I can just make a cryptocurrency and sell it and make millions. I challenge you. It's like having an Instagram or a Twitter page. If you try and get followers without adding any value, you're not going to get any. So yes, you can open up a Twitter account or an Instagram account, but unless you provide value that they're not getting somewhere else, you're not going to get just thousands of followers that you can just use to your pleasure. So there's no such thing as just making a cryptocurrency and then selling it. People have to want to use it and trade it for a reason. There has to be value behind it. And with XRP, I see there is a lot of value. Here's something else that's just flat out wrong. He does explain something in a correct way, or at least as I understand it, that the trusted nodes on the Ripple network, you can't just be a node yourself. You have to be a trusted node, which sure makes sense, because Ripple's not going to want every Yahoo and their mother on their network validating transactions. They want to know who you are. They want to know things. That's perfectly reasonable. If you're trying to add value to something, you want to make sure that the others that are involved are on the same page as you. However, the statement of you can't just send money to whoever you want is false. You can. If you have a XRP address and someone else has an XRP address, guess what you can do? send them tokens. Maybe he's making a direct reference to the money part, but you are certainly able to send XRP from one person to another. That's totally doable. Moving on. Reliable and fast. This is where I think, and I kind of touched on it before, the XRP is going to be the bridge token asset, however we want to label it, between the, what is it called? Not the relic system, the traditional, crap, I just had it. Basically our old financial system, legacy. The legacy system and the, I guess, blockchain system are going to have to overlap in some way. And I think because XRP is reliable and fast, that could be another use. It may not be the intended use of that Ripple had for XRP, but I think that could be what it's used for. Is kind of that bridge for, retail banks with retail customers, whether it's sending funds or whatever it is, that XRP could be used for that in addition to global settlements. Here, centralization. I'm not going to get into it. Again, go to, there's a lot of other ones. What is his name? Dre Ventures, The Modern Investor, Teenage Investor. There are a few other people that, Thinking Crypto. There's a few other YouTubers that just go look at their pages and learn. So all that's about the centralization. Again, Ripple Labs never paid a dime to create. Yes, totally correct, totally true. When I was mining Bitcoin, I had to pay for the electricity. So that could be, this is a correct statement in that mining Bitcoin, you have to pay for the Bitcoin. And then hopefully it's more valuable later. That totally makes sense. I wouldn't call this a red flag. I would say it's a data point. It's, if that's for you, if that makes the token worthless because no one had to pay an electric bill, then sure, it's worthless. But in my mind, as long as there's no interest attached to the token or the coin or the currency, as long as there's no interest, you can do whatever you want. Because if there's no value, then it won't be a problem. This kind of comes with a 14-year-old point of view of, getting money for free, which I think Ripple's been around since 2012 and probably working every day or every business day since then to create more value behind XRP. I hardly think they're doing all that for free. And this buying worthless air, that's, I guess the same could be said for Bitcoin, minus the electric bill. I don't know, it's not a red flag by any means, it's just not. And he points out Jared, gentleman, saying that because what's his name? Chris Larson has 5.19 billion XRP, and I'm sure this January 2nd. So this is when it was going up, 380, wherever it landed. That makes him a billionaire, or I guess a 37.3 billionaire. That's great. I don't see why that's stupid. I think the guy that owns Amazon has made a crap ton of money as well. I don't think that's stupid. I guess that means he did the math. And Novogratz, he's a little more, probably because more people follow him or more people has a bigger spotlight on him. He just kind of points out that with the value of XRP, Chris Larsen is now worth 55 billion times Zuckerberg as the 5th richest man in the world. Period. 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 It's not stupid. It's not dumb. He's not complaining. It just is what it is. This is something else that people point out, and I think it's kind of the same thing that Kenn Bosak was referring to. There is more at stake than just monetary gains. And individuals saying that people shouldn't focus on making money solely, which I try and figure out how would you be able to use and realize a value or extract value from Bitcoin if it were not to sell it at a higher price than you bought it. Sure, you can make a smart contract and use it that way, whether you're on the Ethereum platform or Bitcoin or whichever platform, you can use it that way, and that could be looked at as, after you've looked at Bitcoin under the hood, and you say to yourself, oh, well, I don't want to buy $1,000 Bitcoin and sell it later for $10,000 because then I'm just about the money. I want to buy a portion of a Bitcoin so I can put that into a smart contract so that, whatever your contract's trying to do, it'll do it. I'm not sure if that's what people are referring to when they say, oh, don't be in it for just the money. I don't know. I guess that's a question I have yet to have answered. Ripple nodes. So he confesses, as do I, and I hope everyone does. He doesn't claim to be 100% right about everything when it comes to Ripple. I don't either. And if anyone else does, your name better be Chris Larsen or Brad Garlinghouse. That being said, if you gather enough indications and maybe he means information and red flags, enough I'd say is relative. Correct information, I'd say that's a stretch because some of it isn't correct. And he's doing this to, whether it's self-sacrifice, I don't know. I open myself to the shitstorm of XRP believers. Listen, I believe in Bitcoin, and I believe in XRP, I believe in Dash, I believe in Litecoin. I believe in these things because I've studied them, because I've looked at them through the modern money mechanics, if you will, and asked myself, could this make a viable currency? If it's adopted, could it be a currency? So I look at it from that point of view. Yes, the decentralization and the immutability and all those other things are great to have, but could it be used as a currency? And to me, the answer is yes. So believer, fanboy, no, I just know it well enough to put a lot of money in it with the, not with the idea, but with enough confidence that I will be correct. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not sure if he's getting away from what XRP is meant to be used for, but he says if XRP is used as a medium of exchange and it is backed by fiat currency, that would essentially defeat the whole crypto as a hedge against global financial meltdown, which kind of makes sense, but again, XRP isn't backed by fiat currency. It is a means to transmit fiat currency. So I guess it's technically backed for 3 seconds, if you want to get technical. But I actually can kind of agree with him on this if I, put my imagination hat on and think, all right, 20, 40 years from now, if XRP does prove useful and Ripple does accomplish what they set out to do, like Amazon with books, that was their that was their thing, sell books. Once they figured that out and they were really good at it, they then moved on to selling other things. So I can imagine if Ripple's first problem they're going to solve is global settlement. Once they figure that out, could they then move into, commercial banks? And could that then lead into retail payments? I have no idea. But I do see XRP's use in payments being a lot more likely to happen, even though it would be in the distant future, than Bitcoin would be. Sort of. It's hard to say that, but given what's behind XRP and how far it has come thus far, I think Bitcoin would have to do a lot of catching up and a lot of growing up in order to be used as payments in a retail space. But that's just my imagination. So I kind of can agree with him, and I don't see, or I guess the term fiat currency, to me, I'm kind of okay with it, but as soon as you use the debt-based fiat, no, I don't want it. So I'm sort of okay with the fiat label. Maybe I'll have to get in that in a different video, because that's a little confusing even for myself. So he's saying there's a conflict of interest here if XRP is trying to replace, or if XRP is backed by fiat, meanwhile cryptos are to replace fiat. He said there's this conflict of interest, which maybe. And then he goes on further explaining, if fiat currencies collapse, wouldn't the trust in banks go completely extinct? Yes. I think they may kick and scream till the end and try and change their business model to accommodate this kind of currency or this kind of technology. But when he touches on the economic model that creates more debt than money to ever repay it, that is correct. That's when he brings back the debt-based currency, which creates more money than can be repaid. That's a problem. In my opinion, solve that problem, and 90% of your issues in the world will eventually disappear. But that's kind of the only other time he touches on this button, or at least my button of debt-free currency, and doesn't mention that, oh, by the way, Bitcoin and all the other cryptocurrencies, whether you think they're currencies or not, are not brought into existence with attached interest. But maybe I'll cover that in another video. Here I think he meant with efficient and distracting. I think he meant removing wealth or extracting, which here's another flat out wrong statement, that Ripple aims to make banks even more efficient at extracting wealth from the world's population. That's not their aim, but I think he's under the impression that if banks are able to become more efficient and they are able to do their job better, then they're just going to extract more wealth from the world's population, which kind of I could see as being correct. However, if they do use XRP, well, so they basically extract wealth from the world's population through debt-based currencies and the creation of debt-based currency, because then they need the interest paid back, so they print it for free, and the loan isn't there until you sign the documents, and then not only do you have to pay the loan back, but you have to pay back more money. So before you signed the document, or before you signed the loan, the mortgage, whatever it was, that that money was not in circulation. The second you sign your name, bam, there's the money. And also there's the money, and you have to pay back the interest. That's where the extraction of wealth comes. XRP, I don't know, it's a hard case to be made, but I could kind of see where he's drawing that conclusion. He mentions the Fed's printing press running hot, i.e. printing money. However, adding the lack of interest payments that would happen if you were to use XRP or use Ripple or Bitcoin, that to me is that's the big difference. So a lot of people refer to Fed printing money. That's fine. There's no value behind it, so I guess that's what they're referring to, and I would agree with them. No value, you're just inflating the money. But not only is their printing machine running hot, but they're also creating more money that has to be paid back with an insufficient amount of money in circulation. But maybe that's just semantics. Again, he touches on the 60% supply is controlled by Ripple, and they sell them and have paid nothing for the tokens, yada yada yada. One final touch on digital fiat, the renewed version of debt-based traditional fiat system. This one's wrong. If he removed debt-based and just said a renewed version of traditional fiat system, maybe you could make a case for that. But debt-based XRP and every other crypto option, we'll just call them options, tokens, coins, they are not debt-based. So the debt part is the interest part. If there's no interest, if it isn't borrowed, then in my book, that's perfectly fine. Peter, I'm not sure who this guy is. The purpose of the market is to redistribute. Well, here's another one. Sorry, Peter, I'm sure you're intelligent and well-meaning and whatever, but that is not the purpose of a market. Basically, a market makes both parties happy. That's why you engage in a market. If you want to go to a store and buy something, you give them what you feel is enough to compensate them for their costs, and they give you, in return, the item. So both parties are happy. There's no redistribution of wealth if you go buy something. I would say taxation could be a form of wealth distribution, because that's kind of just theft unless you use it to build something. But the purpose of a market is not to redistribute wealth from the many to the few. That's holy hogwash. So yeah, when it comes to Ripple, just ask yourself, who is the few, who is the many? I'm sorry, Crypto Yoda, but I'm still holding my XRP. There's nothing in this article that caused pause, made me think, oh shit, maybe I should go sell it. No, it's same as before. Wow, I really didn't intend this to be an hour, but maybe I rambled. Yeah, so there you go. I'll talk to you next time.